Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the third episode. I'm jumping the gun here. Third episode of Stories That Bring Us Together. My name is Sahgal, and I am the founder and CEO of Synergies Work. Synergies Work, for those who are new, is an only one-of-a-kind incubator accelerator that enables entrepreneurs with disabilities to launch and build sustainable businesses. And we do so by providing end-to-end business solutions, redefining labels, and closing the social and economic gaps that exist between the disability and the business community. Uh, and we do all of this with your help, with the help of all the volunteers, mentors that give their time at no cost to us, for with the help of all the individual donors and our corporate partners. And for that, we are very grateful to all of you. This includes Coca-Cola Company, Anthem, Zen Business, MailChimp, and Microsoft. So thank you all. Before diving in further, let me quickly introduce myself, give an audio description of myself. I'm an Asian woman with shoulder-length dark hair, wearing glasses in blue and black against a gray wall with a painting of a blue-colored crab, the most widely traveled crab in Atlanta, I'm guessing. Stories That Bring Us Together is a talk show that we started in November. And the idea behind it is what's at the core of what Synergies Work stands for. That is, that we have more things in common, more things that bring us together than divide us. And it is all we believe that great things happen when we work together and bring diverse talent and resources together. We are working to build a community that supports entrepreneurs with disabilities. And through stories that bring us together, we are sharing stories of our entrepreneurs, other business leaders who are paving the way for equity and opening doors for other entrepreneurs with disabilities. And two such guests who are with us today are Hadley Harris and Arjun Sahgal. It's my great honor and pleasure to introduce Hadley, who is the co-founder of ENIAC Ventures and an advisor to Synergies Work. And for all the people who love computers, put it in a chat box if you know what ENIAC stands for. I didn't, my mistake. So we would love to pick up your answers in the chat box and share it if you know what ENIAC stands for. After working for large corporations, Hadley launched and sold his own companies and then founded ENIAC Ventures to help other founders. ENIAC provides seed round funding to technology-based founders. Hadley grew up in downtown Boston, where he started his first company, Beantown Odd Jobs, at the age of 13. And I'd love to learn more about this fake parking ticket marketing campaign that he started at 13. I'd love to hear more about that. Outside office, Hadley loves to meditate, does yoga, mixes music, plays tennis. Has a competitive streak there, right? And explores New York with his wife and his young son. He is passionate about improving lives of people with disabilities, and this stems from his close relationship with his brother Travis. He sits on the board director for the Cardinal Cushing Centers that serves adults and children with intellectual disabilities. So welcome, Hadley. Our second guest, thank you. Our second guest today is Arjun, and my co-host and my son. I don't know whether he needs another introduction after this. And how do you introduce your own child is my question. But here, Arjun, I'll make an attempt. He is the general manager for investments and programming at Future Labs and a board member at Synergies Work. He started his career at Silicon Valley Bank, got the startup bug, co-founded his company Easel, and after growing Easel, exited in 2019 and started working on the other side of the table with Future Labs Accelerator. And I must say that it's the time when he quit his bank to founded Easel was the time that I launched Synergies Work, because it made me realize that here's an opportunity that Arjun has, the choice that he can make of starting a company and taking that risk. Is that choice and those resources available to say Angad, my younger son, and to other people with disabilities. So he's the reason, that transition was the reason for me to kickstart Synergies Work. Arjun loves to running. He's a marathoner, wannabe triathlete, and a squash player. Currently working on another project with Angad. So welcome everybody. Join us today. Just to the entire audience, I want you, this is a conversation. So please chime in, put in your questions in the chat box, and we'll take them up as they come up. We want you to be part of this conversation today. So let's dive in. And a question for Hadley. We met, a year back, and got connected through Arjun. But my mistake, my apologies, never really got to know and hear from you about your brother Travis. So I would like to know a little more about him.
Yeah, no, sure. So my brother Travis is 3.5 years younger than me. We're just the two of us. So yeah, we grew up very close. We moved to Boston when I was very young, mostly because there was a lot more kind of opportunities there for Travis in terms of special education in and outside the public school system. He went to school at Cardinal Cushing, the institution RT mentioned I'm on the board of now. Full-time boarding school, kind of intensive program from when I think he was about 12, and then he became a member after graduation of their adult program. So he lives in the South Shore outside of Boston. He works at a gym, which is really something he's very passionate about, is kind of staying in shape, where he cleans the equipment, collects the towels. There's no one I've ever met in my life who's more passionate about their job than Travis. He really enjoys it. He knows the names of everyone there. So it's really kind of fulfilling to see how kind of happy he is with kind of what he's doing with his life.
What was it like growing up with a younger 3.5-year-old's brother? Was he pesty, troublesome, following you around, or was it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, we always got along really well. And it's funny. One of my very oldest memories is the night he was born. So he's kind of been a part of my life for all of my memorable life. And my mom explained to me, both my parents, when he was born, he was different. He has Down syndrome, so has an extra chromosome. So it's something that I always kind of knew. It was never kind of something that I kind of learned over time, and never really saw it as a negative thing. But it was always something that kind of transcended kind of our whole growing up, was that that he's different in these ways. So I guess I haven't really known anything
Different.
But that.
Yes. Arjun, would you like to tell a little bit about Angad? And I would love to hear from a sibling perspective. How was it? Here we are in a talk show. Tell me, how was it growing up?
Angad. Already know, Mom. No, it was very similar, right? So Angad is 6.5 years younger than me. And we moved to the US primarily for better education opportunities for Angad and myself, right? And it was phenomenal. He's still my best friend. Like, I love him to death. He is the happiest person I know. And I think he's taught me a lot more than I can ever teach him. So I think that was the best part. And so, like you mentioned about your story of, knowing about the extra chromosome, and that for me, it was like a vastly different thing. I remember this date because this is one of the memories that's like etched into my head. I think we came back from a party, and I mostly was annoyed that why is my little brother getting all the attention and not me? And as a 7-year-old or 8-year-old, I got to my mother and asked her, like, what's the difference? And she tells me he has extra chromosome. I hadn't taken biology, did not know what any of that meant. So I just thought that means he's better off, right? The extra chromosome means he's just way better. He's got something extra. He's like a Spider-Man. He's just a superhero. And that's something that's actually he's the same, but he's also a superhero for me because he teaches me a lot more. So that's kind of how I viewed growing up with my little brother, which is still true to today. But there were definitely times where he was annoying and I was annoying to him, and there's still times where we do the exact same annoying things to each other. So I think that's still there. But yeah.
That's good to know. Good to know. Uh, just
Sure.
a little understanding, I did say at the beginning, Hadley, that you fund as an entrepreneur, as a venture capitalist, fund companies that are based in technology. To a layperson, what is venture capital? What does a VC do? What does this industry look like?
Sure. Yeah. So we invest in startups. They tend to be, at least in our case, high tech startups. Who, if you think about kind of the tech companies that are very large now, you're kind of Google and Facebook. At some point, they were a startup in the early days and hadn't built a business yet, and they raised venture capital. The reason venture capital exists is that these types of companies tend to take a long time to become profitable. So they're going to lose money for quite a while. Could be a few years, up to even 5, 6, 7 years, maybe even beyond. So they can't get traditional forms of financing. They can't get a bank loan or other forms of debt, and that's how this industry came about. And you have venture capitalists like myself and my partners who will invest in these companies usually kind of, in our case, very early. Often they haven't even built a product yet. There's usually 1 to 3 co-founders. Once they raise money, they'll start to hire kind of early team members, and that's generally how it works. You might ask, like, well, where do we get our money? We raise our money from what we call limited partners, which tend to be large institutions, like pension funds, fund of funds, endowments. In our case, we've really, especially kind of as we've gotten more mature, tried to focus on LPs that we're excited the work they're doing. So in our last fund, we only took money from foundations, charitable foundations, and then beyond that, the majority of our money comes from teachers' pension funds, public workers' pension funds, stuff like that, and a couple of university endowments. So it is kind of a nice thing that we can see we're hopefully making money for these folks that can do good things with them.
That sounds awesome that you are kind of being mindful of where you get their money, and that's really cool. So kind of taking it back in terms of, like, you obviously are investing in people, right? And I feel there are a lot of people on this call that will be wondering, what do you look for, right? Like, how do you figure out, this is the right team to back, this is the product? Like, what do you look for in the team and the product for anyone who would be interested in this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's not kind of only every situation is a little different, so it's hard to give you kind of a one size fits all. But in general, something they always have is a lot of passion for what they're doing. This is like the only thing they really care about. Building a company is extremely difficult, as you know, Arjun, and takes a lot of time and effort. So if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to put in the time and effort needed to build that company, and usually have some sort of expertise that could come from experience or maybe kind of a unique point of view on what they're trying to do that makes them kind of the best people in the world to do this. So kind of, for example, an investment banker who wants to start, a social network, that's just not going to make sense. But, if an investment banker, and we don't necessarily invest in a lot of investment bankers, but just use an example, had a new way of building software used by investment bankers that they've been thinking about for a long period of time that solved this certain problem that they're seeing. Now that's something that might be interesting. So it's a combination of passion and kind of being in that right position to kind of build the company, either from experience or from kind of a unique insight. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense. So obviously, venture capital is a specific type of capital you raise for high growth startups. So it's not for everyone, right? So how do you? I think the generic question you might hear, like, how do you know your business is right for venture or wrong for venture? Because there are startups outside of it as well, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And honestly, I think a lot of, because venture capital has become kind of more known in kind of mainstream society, people think that they want to raise venture capital, and it's not for most businesses. I would say the mass majority of businesses should not raise venture capital. It's actually quite expensive capital because it invests in such risky things. So if you have a business that you think you can get to profitability it's in the near term, you really shouldn't be raising venture capital, because it'd be much more economical for you to raise a bank loan. I think anything where you can kind of raise debt or a loan, which is most traditional businesses, are things that should not raise venture capital. Usually venture capital are businesses that are very kind of binary outcome, where if it works, it could be this multi-billion-dollar company, and if it doesn't, it's just going to go out of business. And you know, we're just those are the risks we take as venture capitalists. Most businesses go out of business and you get no money back, and that's fine. That's kind of how we operate. But if it's more of a business that's kind of grow over time, and you can kind of predict success, there's probably other options.
Okay. So here, just jumping in here, you talked about passion and leading with passion. Tell us a little bit, going back to your 13-year-old age. Tell me a little, what drove you to start that?
The odd job, the odd jobs. Yeah, for some reason, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I kind of saw him and the passion he had. My mother was also professional, but worked for a larger company. So I think I always had a bit of that entrepreneurial bug in me. At that point, I was solving the problem. It was kind of like a low tech version of Handy or some of these things where people in the neighborhood needed different things done, like sweeping the sidewalk and painting and things like that. And I was able to kind of bring on a few folks of my friends to kind of work for the company. So I just wanted to try something new. I think I needed to make some money because I wanted to go on a trip, and my parents said I needed to make enough money, and I was too young to have a real job. So maybe it was a little bit of necessity driving innovation there. But I'm sure kind of my father's kind of being an entrepreneur was a factor. I saw that it was possible, and it wasn't like something to be scared of.
Got it. So that's money was a good motivation there.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, a need for that. Yeah.
So going into kind of like the startup ecosystem, but in general, right? Like if you're not what do you say if you're the tenants, and not looking specifically for venture-backed companies, few tenants that you should be, you're starting a business, what are a few tenants that you should look for if you're starting a business, right? Like look for good co-founders, product, market fit. How do you figure that out? Because I think the first few steps are always the hardest, as all the steps are hard, but the first few are generally hard to be like, this is something I should do, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The first one is to really kind of think deeply if this is like where your passion is. Kind of, as I said before, starting a company is hard. Growing a company is extremely hard, and especially those early days. A lot of folks are going to be in a position where you may have to forego your salary for some period of time, and these are difficult positions that not everyone has the luxury of being able to even attempt. So if you're going to kind of take this risk and on this big project that may last a decade if successful, you need to make sure you're really passionate about what you're doing. Don't kind of do it because your friends are doing it and whatnot. I'd say the second thing, Arjun, is what you said, which is who you're going to do it with. I think I was lucky at ENIAC to have co-founders. Most of the businesses we invest in are co-founders, and I just think it's so much easier than kind of doing it on your own. And I would suggest kind of finding folks that you have a certain level of trust. You believe that they have the same level of passion for what you're doing, but then your skill sets are kind of complementary. So if you're technical, finding someone with a business background. If you're introverted, finding an extroverted person. And that way, kind of over time, you can be kind of a yin and yang and kind of cover the needs of the business. One mistake people sometimes have is they hire some, or their co-founders exactly like them, and at the end of the day they kind of do the same thing and they have the same weaknesses, because we all have weaknesses. So those would be kind of two things I would focus on. And then I guess the second is just, if you have those two, just jump in and do it. Like some people, you can kind of think too much about it and you can plan, but at the end of the day, you really can't. You learn by doing, and you kind of you're iterative. And some people can get into kind of analysis paralysis around the idea. And there's just only a certain amount of kind of non-hands-on work you can do without kind of jumping in and taking the plunge.
I couldn't agree more. And I think what you said initially is if you have the passion, you just commit to it, right? So I think that brings up to kind of a deeper question right now, and I think this is kind of more just generalistically, and RT jump in as well. Is like why do you think that, you know, being a startup founder or being a founder of anything, right? It's all about passion and having the right resources, right? So in generalistic terms, we don't see that many entrepreneurs with disability take that risk, right? And just generally, why do we think it's the thing, right? And RT, I'll flip the question to you as well. Like, why did you start Synergies Work? What was your initial, like, hey, this is like necessary?
Well, I'll start and say that the time when I launched Synergies Work, there wasn't anybody who was supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities. There isn't any funding from the federal or the state government or private investors going into supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities. Synergies Work is the only incubator accelerator that provides a holistic and a comprehensive support to entrepreneurs with disabilities, and we do this at no cost. And as I mentioned, at the time when you took the plunge into the startup world is the time I realized that there is this huge gap that needs to be filled, because starting and doing entrepreneurship, having your own business has, like everybody else, it has, but more so for folks with disabilities, it offers multiple advantages. And importantly, I believe that there is power in being your own owner of a company. There is that huge power in saying that this is my company, that I'm leading this. So for me, that was a big motivator.
Hadley, I'll toss the same question to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say kind of, entrepreneurship's not for everyone. My brother likes things that are very structured, and a lot of people in society like things that are structured. I personally have found kind of entrepreneurship to be the most fulfilling kind of part of my life outside of my family. And I think there are a lot of people that feel that way, that have gotten the opportunity to start something new or to work within kind of very dynamic environment like that. And so I think it's very important that we extend that opportunity to everyone in society. If you look at kind of startups, it used to be a very niche thing, especially a lot of the stuff that we do at ENIAC. It wasn't long ago that very little money went into startups, and it was a very small number of businesses were started each year, and that's grown a lot over the last 15 years. It's been about 20 years since I graduated from college. I know only a couple of people that started businesses. Now, if you look at most schools, a very large part of the the graduates either are starting a business or joining a relatively young startup. So society is moving that direction, but it's been slow to move to certain communities, in both U.S. and abroad. And I think what we're starting to see with organizations like Synergies is the opportunity for these communities that are groups of disabled groups being able to partake in this incredible opportunity to build things and have that fulfillment. I don't know that there's any reason that it hasn't happened yet, only in that it takes time to move there. It really should happen. And it comes down to, folks like yourselves that start organizations that provide the needed structure for these individuals to know that it's possible. And then there are examples, again, like I mentioned, having seen my dad start a business, I knew it was possible, and that goes a long way. So it's like a snowball. As it continues to grow, there'll be more and more opportunities for these people. So I think it's very exciting and an area that will only grow going forward. But it's going to take folks like yourselves that start these organizations.
Thanks for that, Hadley. We have a couple of questions from our audience, which I'm going to just jump in and ask both of you. I have a question from Kimberly, who's saying that when you are starting a business, should you start that on your own because other people may not have the same vision as you? What do you say? Anyone?
Yeah. I get this question a lot, actually. It's a really important question. If you can find people who share your vision and your passion, I think it's easier to build a business with co-founders. But sometimes you just don't, you might not know anyone in your community who kind of shares that passion. And in that case, I would encourage you to start by yourself. So I think you're better off not having a co-founder than having a co-founder who doesn't kind of fill your needs in terms of being able to add to the company, but more importantly, have that same passion that you feel for what you're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, like I've said a couple of times, it's not easy to build a company. You really need that passion.
Yeah, no, I would add to that and say that, getting a co-founder is extremely hard in itself as well. Like, your co-founder is with you through the ups and downs, and there are usually a lot more downs than ups. So having and trusting your co-founder is as critical as anything else, right? Like, you're basically getting married to your business and your co-founder for the next 7 to 8 years, or however long it's going to be, right? Yeah,
it's true.
We have someone, Stancil Tutel, who's written that I think because the system is not openly willing to believe in disabled entrepreneurs, it's why there's such a need for programs like Synergies Work. Yeah. Hopefully, as Hadley and you were talking, this is going to have a snowball effect where we see more entrepreneurs with disabilities becoming into taking ownership and leading the way, and then others will follow.
Yeah. I think there's another interesting question, which Hadley goes into kind of what you're talking about, is how entrepreneurship is not structured. Like, inherently, it's not structured. You have to do a lot of things. And so the question from Kimberly is like, do you need all the things in a row before launching, right? And if you want to take that, like,
do you need everything kind of set up?
Like, do you want all your ducks in a row before launching?
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, that's a question that I get also when we go through it. Like, I need to get 100% perfect. Do we need to do that, then launch? So, we face that. So I'd love to get your viewpoint.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly, it can help to be planning, but the planning in my mind is more to kind of make sure that it's something you have the passion to dive in and do. I think once you have that, you're better off starting, because you can only plan so much. And as kind of mentioning before, it's impossible it gets to a point where you can't plan, you need to do. And then when you do, you'll learn and you'll react. You can certainly I agree, Artie, with what you're saying. It's easy to kind of get to a point where you plan as much as you can, but at the end of the day, you got to jump in.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of like diving back a little bit further about like the funding, right? Like, we talked about startups, we talked about how it's kind of set to do it. But when you talk about funding, right, how should someone who is, who maybe have a non-fundable venture business, like maybe it's not for venture, but it's for kind of just a business in itself, like a medium-sized business, how can they go about, in your experience, how would they go about getting funding, or not even just funding, right? How do they get about, like, Synergies Work is a great platform to get started, right? After, like, how do you get to the next step? How do you start growing it, right? Any thoughts or any things that, what should they do to get to that next level?
Sorry, to make sure I understand, Arjun, this is kind of maybe it's like the entrepreneurs that you guys are working with, kind of getting to the next stage. And
yes. Yeah. After they have done the beg, borrow, friends, family, and everybody's money has been exhausted.
That was what I was going to suggest, actually. Yeah, I mean, I think trying to find professional investors would usually, after kind of I guess you have kind of angels that and then you move on to kind of angels you don't know. So it'd be kind of trying to find individual investors who believe in what you're doing, who believe in the cause. That's usually the step after, and then eventually you would get to more professional investors. If you're going more this venture capital route, as we were talking about, there's all these other routes that I think make sense for most businesses around trying to get a bank loan. I don't know as much. You guys probably know more about this than I, but I would imagine there are kind of state and federal, programs set up that, or at least there should be, to help kind of support founders overall, but especially kind of from intellectual and other areas of their disabilities.
Disability.
And they're like, I think they're definitely, as Hadley said, they're grants, and like other options could be like, crowdfunding campaigns could be a really interesting thing.
Mhm.
Having a great story through that, right? If you're making a product for people to use, right? Different ways to kind of spread the message would kind of help kind of get the ball rolling at least.
There is a conversation that is happening on setting up disability funds to promote entrepreneurs and get them to do that. So there are these conversations that are happening. Currently, there is not much investment happening in entrepreneurs with disabilities, but that's the whole idea is as these conversations and the more we talk about it, hopefully the change is going to happen, raise awareness, and there is going to be some change.
The good thing is, I mean, you're seeing more and more kind of money flowing. It's slow, maybe slow moving, but with impact investing overall, I don't think that it's kind of touched this area yet. Hopefully that will change. But if you look at kind of the environment, for example, a lot of money kind of is going into impact, into education and things like that. So I think it's on all of us to think about how can that type of investing, where it's kind of dual bottom lines, having an impact, but also building a business, can flow into this area.
Yes, yes, I agree with you, because there is that balance that is required between, I know we invest for profit and then we invest not for social impact. So how do you think we can change, both Arjun and Hadley, I would like to get your opinion. How do we maintain that balance and that flip happening? Because there is one end which will invest for profit, and the other end which is saying but there has to be a balance even for corporations to say that yes, it brings in profit. Helps my bottom line when small businesses grow, or what entrepreneurs with disabilities are bringing in revolutionary products which help not only their community but everybody else, because they are rooted, that maybe that design is rooted in their own experiences that benefit everyone. And there are plenty of examples today, whether it is Kindle, which we use, or even text messages and stuff like that, which are beneficial to everybody.
I think like how corporations look at profit should also kind of come to the forefront. Like, profit in just terms of revenue stands is not going to do anything, but profit holistically is kind of what you should push for. Like, profit in terms of, this is going to help my brand, this is going to help me get into a new community, this is going to do that, right? I think that's the first way. Ideally, it would just be, hey, this is going to get you capital. This is a very straightforward, but it most probably isn't going to be there, right? The first step will be, how do you look at profit as a holistic concept, right?
Yeah.
And you do that. And I think that's, hopefully, as Hadley was saying, that's the move towards impact, right? That should be the initial start towards impact. But I think the question, I'll push this back on you, the question should be like, how do you get people to focus on entrepreneurship with disability, right? There's money going to education, but like, how do you get them excited about, entrepreneurship, right? And there are a lot of people like Hadley, you, me, we all get fulfillment from something like this, right? So how do you empower people with disability to have the exact same life experiences as we are, right?
Right, exactly. So yeah, because for Synergies Work, for instance, we can say that we support a lot of small businesses, and they form the backbone of the US economy. Anytime micro businesses account for 92% of all businesses. And that's a question that I also grapple with. How do you bubble this conversation up so that the money is channeled into the small businesses for them to grow? So I would love to get feedback from our audience here who are there. If anybody has any questions, thoughts, or Hadley, Arjun, if you have any questions. So yeah, please go ahead. There is another question that has popped up. Let me ask this from Kimberly Baker. She's asking, I love that angels you know and angels you don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't get that question correctly. Can you type that in again? What's the question?
I think I know she's referencing something I said. You had mentioned friends and family, which often tend to be kind of the first places that founders will go for investment money. So I was calling them angels, and then once you've exhausted that, and and unfortunately, not everyone has the luxury of having people in their friends and family who have enough money to invest. It's actually a very unique situation. And then the next step for businesses, if you are going more the venture capital route, will be to pitch kind of professional angels or folks that you don't know. And a lot of them try and make themselves known on social media, or maybe you could talk to friends of friends and things like that. So that was kind of what I was mentioning is more kind of professional angels as a step after your friends and family.
Got it. There is a statement, Stancil Tutul has said that I think a barrier to why there are not many disabled entrepreneur Fortune 500 businesses is because we require different types of supports. And usually only our family members are willing to provide those support services in order for us to be successful. Yes, I think you're right, but hopefully this will change, and there will be, as an entrepreneur, there will be a lot more supports. Like any other entrepreneur, you need, say, accounting supports or marketing supports, and raising fund supports. If you're able to build that community and wrap around that services around an entrepreneur who has a disability, then the chances of success for that total would be far greater. And you do not necessarily then only have to depend on your family member to come in and bridge in all these gaps. That's the idea, is to break away from that mold and take the entrepreneur with a disability to the providing those supports. Yeah, Arjun, you have.
I think one of the biggest things I learned on my journey was like, you barely, as an entrepreneur, you don't know everything at all. You're not expected to know everything, right? And the community from Accelerator is so critical to have, right? Without it, one person cannot do anything, right? So I think having something like Synergies Work, right? Having that community should hopefully break down that barrier of support, right? Whatever it is, in whatever form it should be, and it should be kind of provided. And hopefully this sparks the conversation, so there are like many more like chapters of Synergy, right? And it's kind of more holistic, because I think that's going to be the critical element of making this work, right?
Yeah, and I think even what a VC does, and correct me if I'm wrong, is also that money is not the only thing that you provide them with all the other supports that they need to grow. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we like to think that we're helpful, and I hope I am. Actually, you spend a very little amount of your time actually investing. You spend a lot more time working with those founders after investing by quite a bit, large margin.
Yeah, and that's what I think is important, is that building that community of support and knowing that you're not alone. Nobody does it alone.
That's right. I mean, even the most famous founders, you think about Jeff Bezos and folks like that, Bill Gates, they had a lot of help and they had a lot of support to do what they did. And so that's needed for everyone.
Yes. And so the one last question that I have, and I will take this question later, it talks about what does Synergies Work choose? Who does Synergies Work choose will be accepted for their I2I program? I can take this up later, but Arjun, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think Hadley had tweeted that recently about you spend very little time actually investing.
Oh, yeah. Coincidence. Top of mind.
And I was just gonna say, I think, just agreeing with you, having kind of even the founders that you kind of are on this journey with, right? Like founders you find in Slack groups and in every aspect, right? Utilize them, right? People's life experiences and shared experiences are super helpful. And I think for me, I learned as much from people going through an accelerator that I did from kind of my investors and people like that. So these guys who are going through these experiences kind of can provide you a lot of feedback. So utilize everyone in kind of your network to kind of help you out.
There's another question I have from the audience, and it says, do people think that people with disabilities are not, and she puts not in all caps, qualified to run a business so they will not invest or take that risk?
I mean, I don't think that's true. So I think the focus should be on, proving that that's not true. And, it's organizations like Synergies that give the kind of structure and support so that these founders can be successful. And then, and that will kind of successful breed success.
That's true. There is another comment from Nadine Seaback, and she says it rightly that it is also a deterrent that even having mild success in business can threaten disability income. We know that if you're on SSI or SSDI and get Medicaid, then having that income will deters people from setting up their own businesses. And to support yourself even somewhat with a living wage is so fulfilling, but doesn't fully fund the extra supports you need to live and function. And that is so true. That's the systemic barriers to living, being employed and earning an income like everybody else are so great that people fear that if they earn extra money, that they don't have Medicaid. And that is something that I know families are constantly struggling to balance. An extremely valid point that has been made.
And is there a way around that where if you set up like a trust or anything or something like that, so you don't get the income, but someone you trust can get the income and support you or get the business to be in their name?
There are many ways that we work with individuals because it varies from person to person how it is done. So yes, there are ways around it, and hopefully things will change even systemically, that these barriers are being erased. There is an ABLE account that allows you to put your earned income after going through all of that, and you can save money and invest in your business through that. Yeah. Any other questions anyway, Arjun, you have?
I'll ask you a question, Hadley, not related to startups or kids. Like, what's the one thing that your brothers taught you that's, the biggest thing your brothers taught you?
I mean, he's had the biggest impact on me, of anyone, more so I think than either of my parents. So it's hard to kind of name just one thing, but I feel like growing up with my brother and seeing him utilize his skills as well as he has to be successful, in his own way, and to live a fulfilling life is very motivating for me, and always has been. So I think more kind of a role model in that way, I would say, just in terms of kind of seeing his attitude and kind of the success that he's been able to have, and kind of being a really hard worker, it's really been motivating to me.
I hear that. It seems to be that he's a very dedicated person towards his work. Arjun, what about you? Let's throw the question back at you.
I think similar. No offense, Mom, but Angad has had way more pronounced impact. But I think for me, the biggest thing is his ability to forgive and make friends. I think he is generally the biggest heart I know, and so having that has taught me a lot about myself. So he's very critical to my growth. Awesome. So I know we're coming up on time, so I'll kind of do the thing. And I'll explain to people, like, I think Synergies Work, if you are a entrepreneur with a disability and are interested in kind of going down this path, I think this is a phenomenal organization. Obviously, I'm a little biased considering it's my mother, but I do think it's the stories that I've seen come across and the impact they have has been phenomenal and really good. So if you are interested, I think you should definitely apply to Synergies Work, and I think Mom can talk about how they kind of look for and what they look for in entrepreneurship. Additionally, I think one of the best parts about this is that it is an extremely inclusive community, as it should be. So if you're an entrepreneur, a mentor, right, are interested in kind of working and helping entrepreneurs, but also learning from entrepreneurs as helpful has been, you should definitely reach out to RT and see, what it can be. And I think the last thing is like we are expanding to the Northeast. So if you're kind of here and interested in kind of mentoring, reach out to me, and I'm going to help out here and help grow this organization here.
Thank you so much. Let me begin by thanking both of you. Hadley, thank you so much for taking the time for coming in today, sharing a little bit about your brother, Travis, your work here. It's been an honor. Thank you, Arjun, for co-hosting and sharing. And it's nice to have you here. And for everybody else, for our audience today, for joining in and jumping in, it requires everybody's effort together to work together, as the name suggests. And I'll pick up the question. We are opening up for I2I cohort, which starts in spring. And to answer your question, Kimberly, all that we require from you, there is an application process on the website, synergieswork.org/I2I. We want to know where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, whether it is an idea or whether you are expanding your business, what kind of commitment you are willing to make. Because as Arjun and Hadley shared, it's not an easy journey, but it requires time, commitment, passion. We cannot do it for you, but we can do it with you. And that's all that we're looking from, a commitment and your passion. Are you the right fit for that? That's what we look for. So if you're interested in this, go ahead and put in your application. And I'm sorry, I want to apologize here that we were not able to get our interpreters today, but we will be doing and putting the text captioning and everything else before we put the recorded version out. And as Arjun mentioned, we are expanding. If you are in Northeast as a community partner, as a business corporation, as a nonprofit, we are looking for those relationships to grow there. So thank you again for joining us today, and thank you to both of you, Hadley, Arjun, and Assign One News that makes this production all together. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.